Yo, what's up? I'm Rainiel James Malate from PATHFIT 1A and I am going to tackle about the principles of training. So, the first principle that I'm going to tackle about or to share you is the principle of individuality. The principle of individuality maintains that no two individuals will benefit from exercise exactly the same way physically or psychologically. Differences in genetics, age, experience, body size, and health status can all affect the outcomes of a workout. So this tells us that each person, particularly athletes or any one of us, will respond differently to the same training stimulus. For example, a group of athletes looking to gain strength could all follow the same well-designed program, yet after completing it, the individual training response could differ greatly among the athletes. So, karayog sigunhini nga individuality is anyone can go or undergo any training, or like athletes can undergo any training or like usa nga routine, but magkakaiba-iba ang response physically or psychologically. Like example, may ada iba nga masasayunan la or ma-perform or ma-execute ano sa nga routine or training, while the other naman ang iba is feel nera dire nera kaya good or like kukurean nera pag-execute han said nga routine or training naging hataga-era. So that's the principle of individuality in training. And the next principle of training is the principle of specificity. So the principle of specificity of training states that the way the body responds to physical activity is very specific to the activity itself, and the more relatable the training, the more benefit it will have towards reaching your goals. So, like for example, someone who jogs can expect that their jogging performance would improve as well as their aerobic conditioning. So that's an example of principle of specificity. Moving on, the next principle is the progression. It states that you must start slowly and gradually increase the amount of the exercise and keep overloading. So you must start from a light exercise and then gradually level up the difficulty or complexity of an exercise. Example, like magbubuhat kahin weights or dumbbell or singota barbell. Ang barbell may nagtitimbang yahin 60 pounds. So yan na nga week, hihimoon is 3 sets ng 8 reps gamit ang 60 pounds. And then pag ka next week, pwede ka na mag-add-in more pounds pa hani mo ginaalsa na weights, like magiging 65 pounds na hiya, but depende hay mo kung karoon mo more sets or more reps, basta amo na ito yan yung karoon singunhan progression, the principle of progression. So the next principle of training is the overload principle. So overload principle states that you have to increase the intensity type or time of a workout progressively in order to see adaptations. So an example of a program that uses overload principle would be one that prescribes squatting a prescribed weight for 5 sets for 1 week and moving to squatting a slightly heavier load for 5 sets the next week, and progressively increasing the loads each subsequent week. That's an example of an overload principle. The next principle is the principle of adaptation. Adaptation is your body's physiological response to training. This refers to the process of the body setting accustomed to a particular exercise or training program through related exposure. So like for example, a beginning weightlifter performs squats with 10 repetitions at 150 pounds. After 2 weeks of lifting this weight, the lifter notices the 150 pounds feels easier during the lift and afterwards causes less fatigue. So the lifter adds 20 pounds and continues with the newly established stress of 170 pounds, and that is an example of adaptation principle. Our next principle is the principle of recovery. So the body needs rest to recover itself. Short hours to between multiple sessions in a day minimizes injuries. For muscles to recover, it needs to rest in order to recover back its strength. So, syempre, after performing pira ka session or pira ka set pira ka session aton pag training, syempre need natin mag-rest for us to be able to have to gain back our strength and syempre energy. Pagbalikan natin energy nga nagamit during naton training or exercise. That's what recovery is. And the last principle of training is the reversibility. Any adaptation that takes place as a result of training will be lost if you stop training. Use it or lose it. For example, a track athlete's VO2 max and strength will decrease if they injure themselves and are unable to train for a period of time. So once nga mag-stop ka ang imo training is magiging waray gamit ang resulta nimo mga naging training is mga ngadto waray gamit. Syempre kay dire mo naman niya nami-maintain ano pan sense niya, ano pan matatabo. Syempre waray na. Like hiton mga athlete nga na injured. Sugad kung mandugay hira nga waray training, syempre mawawara naan era mga dati nga gipaghirapan era kalawasan. So that's reversibility. And that concludes the principle of training. I hope you learned something from watching my video, and thank you for listening and watching. That's all. Thank you.
Shopping is my life.